Alright, hello again, Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College with yet the next part of this project that I've been working on. What I did, just for your information, what I did in the last iteration of this was I went back and literally rebuilt 3 times. I rebuilt this the double controller.swift, added the code, tried taking the code and putting it in from the book, and regardless of what I put in there, the system just didn't like it. And it does compile, but when I go to run it, it does not show me my picker. And I'm going to save this, so if any of you want to look through it, and if you see where I've made a mistake, you want to let me know, I'd love to hear from you. But as far as I can tell, I did it okay. So everything is set up, it just doesn't work. So I'm going to go on. So so far, out of the 5 we're supposed to do, I've got 2 of them working completely and 1 of them that doesn't work. So I'm going to jump up to page 230 in the book and talk about implementing the dependent components. For this section, as it says, we'll focus on new stuff. And again, the idea in this particular one is we're going to have a picker or a double picker, whatever you want to say, and it's going to have basically a state on one side, and then depending on the state you pick, it'll pick out zip codes for that particular state. So as the author says in here, we'll need a separate list of zip code values for each item in the left-hand component. We'll declare 2 arrays, 1 for each component as we did last time. We'll also need a dictionary where we'll store an array for each state, as is shown in the picture here. Later, we'll implement a delegate method to notify us when the picker selection changes. So when we change the state, to make sure that the zip codes that are on the right change as well. Alright, so with that said, I'm going to start on that one. Hopefully have a little better luck than the one I've been working on. So they tell us to come in here to the dependent component picker view controller. So that's where I am right now. And as always, we're going to be adding here the UI picker view delegate and the UI picker view data source. Alright, and again, we get that error because we have not yet implemented those particular methods. So we'll do that shortly. I'm entering the code right now from the bottom of page 230. This will be either the last or the second last lecture on this chapter that I'm going to be doing. Okay, so those are our variables, and now on to page 231, the author says it's time to build a content view. This process will be almost identical to the 2 previous ones that we've built. All right, it says all right. So we're told to come into the main storyboard and start our work here. So the one that we want now is our dependent right there. So the first thing, as always, we'll do is remove from here. We remove the label. We'll come in and we'll add a picker. As we've been doing, try to bump it up right on the top. Looks pretty good right there as far as I can tell. and we'll immediately put in our button underneath it. And as always, our button will say select. Alright, so let's make some changes here. Oh, I got a button there. Did that before. So, alright, so let's come in first of all and with our picker right here. Let's come in and align, horizontally align it. Set items of new constraints, add our constraint. Okay, that's good. Come in there and tell it to resolve our layout issue. That's good. Go up to the button. And first, let's control drag up from our button over to here. Set our vertical spacing. Okay. And don't want to do anything here. Sorry. But I do want to come back here and I want to go to pin. Make that 0 and set that up. That's where I think I wanted items of new constraints. There we go. So we've got this. As far as I know now, that's all okay. There's our view controller. I want to control drag from here. Oops, try to. Control drag from here down. Set up a relationship segue. Good. That should hopefully, now we've got that set up. Got that set up. This is all good. As far as I can tell, everything looks okay. So it's set on 231. Here's a hint. Start off by opening main storyboard. Find the view controller. Repeat the same basic steps we've done before. We need an outlet property now. So let's close a few things that we don't need. Alright, come back up here. Let's open up the assistant editor. It's a little bigger. So we've got the assistant editor for our. So we want to come through here and control drag down. And we want to set up an outlet. This is called dependent picker. And connect. There that is. Come for our button. As always, we want to set that to an action. Button pressed. And I want to do one thing real quick. Don't ask me why I want to do this, but I do anyway. Now when I'm looking at this, I've got to go back in here and resolve my layout issues. Okay, try that again. We want to vertically center that. It's not where I wanted. Let's see, I want to horizontally center it. Sorry, it's morning. And resolve my layout issues. That should fix that. And this, don't ask me why, but this just brought something up into my mind. And I want to bring up my double one again. Don't ask me why. But I wanted to double check and make sure. Yep, my button pressed is set up. Okay, I just wanted to check. Don't ask me why, but something just hit me that maybe it wasn't connected. But it appears as though it is. So, I'm up to my dependent. That's where I am here. Okay, it says let's implement this controller class. This implementation may be a little gnarly at first, By making one component dependent on the other, we've added a whole new level of complexity to our controller class. Although the picker displays only 2 lists at a time, our controller class must know how to manage 51 lists. Alright, the list of states, the list of 50 states, and all of the particular lists of, so the one list of 50 states and the 50 different lists of zip codes. The technique we're going to use here actually simplifies the process. The data source methods look almost identical to what we did for the double picker view controller. Before we write some code, we need some data to display. Up until now, we've created arrays in code using a list of strings, but we don't want to make you type all that stuff, or that's what the author says, so they've included a property list called state-directory.plist in the code archive. We're supposed to drag that file into the pickers folder. It says if you single-click the plist in the project navigator, you can see and even edit the data that it contains. So, first thing I want to do is come in here and I want to view navigators, show my project navigator so I can have that. Alright, I want to come into Finder, desktop here, there's a press, bring this stuff down a little. Okay, so that's the state directory plist. Drag that file into the pickers folder. We want to copy, finish. There it is. So it says that we can open it in here. There it is. So for instance, you should be able to come down now to Wisconsin. Try that again. Don't know if it's going to let me do this or not. Come on. And it shows me all of the different items that are in there. And as I start to peruse my way down here, you'll notice if I look long enough, there's 53546. There's 53511, etc. Okay? Alright, so I dragged it in as we were told to do on the bottom of page 231. Showed you the data is shown on page 232. So it says, now let's write some code. Alright, so in my dependent here, in my button pressed, which I've just added right here, start to add some code. Alright, that's everything as far as I can tell. That's everything in the button pressed routine. A couple things it appears not to like here, so we'll have to fix those. One. Alright, that fixed everything. A couple typos. So next we have to add some code into our Viewdidload. Somewhere in here, instead of saying selected states, I said selected date. Hopefully that fixed it. So that's all the code that's on page 233. Finally, we have to add our delegates as are shown on most of page 234, so I'm going to add that in just a sec. So you oftentimes do, let me put a little space in here, so make it easier for all of us to read. This time, notice we're returning 2 because we want to have 2 rows. Hopefully I have not made any mistakes typing. Very similar to the code that's right here, so I'm going to, oops, it's right here. So I'm going to copy that code in and make the appropriate changes. more routine to type in here. That's everything. And looking at this very quickly, which is what I'm doing here, I did not notice any errors. Okay, it says there's no need to talk about the button press since it's fundamentally the same as what we've done before. We should talk about the Viewdidload though, which is right here. First thing we do in Viewdidload is to grab a reference to the main bundle. A bundle is a special type of folder that follows a specific protocol, for lack of better words. This bundle object represents the application. One of the primary uses of the bundle is to get resources that we added to the resources of our project, such as the zip code list that we just added. So that line in here that says, this one, lines 53 and 44 that say let plist URL equal bundle, etc. That's what we use to retrieve the URL of the resource we're interested in. And as mentioned on the middle of page 235, this will return a URL containing the location of the state dictionary plist file. We can then use that URL to load our directory, and that's what we're doing then in here. Now, in the middle of the page, they mention that the Swift dictionary type has no convenient way to load data from an external source. However, the Objective-C NSDictionary class does, so that's why we're using the Objective-C NSDictionary methods. To populate the array for the left-hand component, which displays the states, we get all the keys and assign those to the states array. But first, we go through and make sure that we set this up so that it's alphabetically sorted. All right. Unless we specifically set the selection to another value, the picker starts with the first row selected and it gets all the associated zip codes. Once you change the state on the left, of course, the zip code on the right will change. The two data source methods that we see down on the bottom of the screen they're pretty much identical to the previous version. We return the number of the rows in the appropriate array. It says the second delegate method here is the new one, and that's where the magic, so to speak, happens. That's the one on the bottom here that you see right there. It says in this method, which is called anytime the picker selection changes, we look at the component and see whether or not the left-hand component is the one that changed. If it is, we grab the array that corresponds to the new selection and assign it to the zip code array. Next, we set the right-hand component back to the first row and tell it to reload itself. And in this way, as mentioned towards the top of page 236, because of the fact that we're swapping the zip code array whenever the state changes, the rest of the code is pretty much the same way it was in the previous example. Now remember, these two components aren't equal in size. The states array has got 50 in it. Alright, the zips array is going to be different because for the zips you've got a certain number of zip codes for each state that's in there. So even though the zip will never be more than 5 characters long, it's been given equal billing with the state. So we're told to add the following method to the delegate section of the dependent component pickReviewController.swift file. Alright, I believe that's everything that's typed in, so I'm going to get rid of some of these blank lines so this reads a little bit better. Okay, and they mentioned in the method that we just added, we return a number that represents how many pixels wide each component should be. And the picker will do its best to accommodate this. We've chosen to give in the state 2/3 of the available width and the rest goes to the zip. But as the author says, you can play with it and see if you come up with something that looks a little better. So it should be a time to file save. Let's run it and see now when we look at this, yeah, just exactly what we get. And then the only thing that's left is to finish up the game, which is the last component that's in here. Again, this is the first time I've run the simulator today, so we may have some problems getting it to come up. I'll give it a second or two. So I'm on the middle of page 237, so I've got literally about 8 or 9 pages to go in the chapter. And there's a bunch of code on page 239, more on 240. And so a little bit more on the bottom of 242, most of 243. Some more on 245, so I'll be doing that in another lecture. Again, it's not coming up, so I'm going to stop the simulator and start it again. right. Well, that isn't good. There's got to be a step in here that I'm missing because I'm literally not showing my picker view. So I've got to go back and look because whatever that step is that I'm missing it in this one and the previous one. Everything was going great yesterday, but then of course I ran out of time. So no excuse, but my guess is if I select here, I'm going to get yet another one of these exception errors. So I'm going to stop, see if I can fix both of those. And if I can, then when I come into the next presentation, I'll let you know what the problem was. So I will talk to you with the last portion of this at that time. Stop the simulator, and we'll stop taping for this iteration.